welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate Bryan. I am back here for the 100th episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast. I am so excited to share this episode with you. We're going to talk about many of the things that have happened throughout the past 2 years for One Girl, and then, of course, things that have happened over the past year, and then what is to come. But I am so excited to be here with two very special guests, back by popular demand, my sisters, Moira and Delia.
Hey.
Hey, glad to be back.
I'm so excited to have them on. I was trying to think of who would be the best guest to have on for the 100th episode, and I couldn't think of any better guests because they know all the stories that One Girl has covered. They obviously know me better than anyone probably. So we're just going to talk all about life and things that are going on with One Girl. But before we get into that, I think that the people want a life update from everyone. So we're going to I'll start with Moira and give us a little update. What's happened since the first episode you were on was way back in the beginning. Moira and Delia were here for one of the very first episodes, one of the first 10. So it was pretty much 2 years ago. So 2020 has obviously brought so many different things. If you're listening to this, you probably can talk about positive things that have happened, negative things. Can you girls share maybe what has been the most difficult thing about 2020 for you? And what has been the most positive thing, or maybe the thing that has given you hope during this difficult time?
That's a $1 million question. I think I'm going to start with the positive. It definitely, I didn't do the self-care like what Delia did. I didn't take it to that extreme. But I remember when they first told us to stay home, it was for 2 weeks. So I thought, well, they say keep up with your schedule and keep just doing what you're doing. Get up at the same time every day. So I would still get up and I would go for a 2-mile walk as if I was pretending like I was walking to work, and I would just walk home and go to work. But I definitely, tried to keep up with that. And then I think the difficult thing was just, I think it's, the family, seeing family or trying to figure out a way. The digital stuff is really hard. I don't like Zoom. Most people love it. I hate Zoom calls. I hope my boss isn't listening right now. But I think that's really hard, is just the struggle with finding a way to connect with people in person, whatever that may be. And I think we all have varying levels of COVID cautiousness. Which is fine. And I think, some people have, immune deficiencies or autoimmune issues, or they're sick, or just more cautious in the anxiety it's causing has been really hard for people. So yeah, I think that's the most difficult, is just the lack of human connection. But I've also, in swinging it into a more positive way, I've seen how many people have gotten together and saved local businesses. I think we're definitely shopping more local, which I really want to see, trying to get away from Amazon, even though it's super convenient. But yeah, supporting your community has really shown itself in 2020, and I hope it continues.
Kind of on the same note as what Moira said, I think for me especially, but also in general, the whole pandemic, all of the quarantines and shutdowns has really helped people focus on the grassroots, like family and small family-owned businesses, and supporting your local community above anything else, trying to not shop at the big box stores, and really taking into account what is the most important for us as a community, as mankind.
Yeah, I think it's been so hard for so many people in so many ways, obviously, people losing jobs, people losing loved ones, people getting sick during this time. But there are also so many positives when you see how people have supported one another and stepped up to support one another, even just like looking out for their neighbors in a different way. I love seeing all those stories on social media. And as much as we're so isolated right now, being stuck at our houses, and like Moira was talking about with the Zoom calls, I feel like everybody's burnt out from Zooms, and phone calls and you just are looking for human connection. It's been so beautiful to see even, people wearing masks and social distancing and doing all the things that people are still finding ways to be there for, even for strangers, for their loved ones, but also for people that they don't even know. So I just want to encourage everybody who's listening, let's keep looking for ways to support one another, look for ways to support those who are experiencing homelessness. We're going to see them a lot on the streets, especially sitting here in Detroit. I know we're starting to see more and more people who are suffering in that way. So let's look out for them and do whatever we can to pull together little bags and keep them in our cars. Gift cards. I know that a lot of times just a little gift card. I know numerous families that are struggling in different ways, whether it's job loss or family members are dealing with addiction or just going through all these different struggles right now. And a gift card, small gift card can go such a long way for someone just to brighten their day and help them during this difficult time.
And even making sure, I know it's sometimes hit or miss with cash, but I think just carrying like some ones in your wallet to make sure you have something to give if someone is in need. Or the snack packs. Like sometimes I'll put in Ziploc bags like granola bars and like a little tuna snack pack, and maybe put like $1 bill in there and just keep it in my car. And if I see someone on a corner, then I'll just throw it out the window. Not throw it out the window, but
throw it at them.
Hand it to them from the window. And they're so grateful. Maybe a couple months ago, I was outside Whole Foods in Midtown in Detroit, and there was a man there, and I didn't have any smaller bills, but I had a $10 bill, and he was in a wheelchair. He's like a regular over at one of those intersections, and I gave him the 10, and he said, "Oh, thank you so much. This will get me half of my stay at a hotel tonight." So I think our first instinct is to sometimes think, oh, everybody's on drugs that's homeless, but it's not the case at all. I think generally they are truly needy and can't have so much difficulty getting out of that pit.
Yeah. And I think so many people throughout this past year with the pandemic have fallen into that pit. So as much as we can be looking out for one another, I saw a group that we've had on the podcast before, Project Kind, Jenny, who's amazing. I saw she was going around New Jersey last night and giving away free stays at hotels. And she would pick people up that she saw were homeless, and she'd say, "Hey, so-and-so," and she would give a name of a person. They donated X amount of dollars, or they donated their points. People that are listening that have business points, imagine how that would make someone feel if you just went up to someone and you were like, "Hey, I booked you a room at this such and such a hotel that they can get a hot shower, a hot meal, sleep in a bed." It can just change everybody's world. But I want to talk about One Girl. Obviously, that was a huge part of like what I wanted to have you girls on, because you've been such a huge part of this entire journey. I've shared before on the podcast that I feel like it's my entire life journey has led me to some of the stories that we've covered and the podcast and everything that's going on. So really, you two girls have been such a huge part, and our brother Peter, who may be listening, have been such a huge part, and our parents have been such a huge part of this coming to fruition. And I'm so grateful to you for being so supportive and being a part of it, because you really have been such a huge part of everything that's been going on with One Girl. And it's crazy to think that it's been 2 years since One Girl launched. 2 years since you girls were on. So much has happened since then. I just remember us sitting in the Detroit podcast studio and laughing and thinking like, oh, this is just like going to be a fun little project. And now it's just morphed and grown and evolved into something that I don't think anybody could have fathomed. And I'm excited for everything that is to come in 2021 and beyond. And I'll share some of that in a little bit. But I'd love if you would both share, and I'll share too, but if you would share just a little bit about kind of your thoughts, like watching One Girl evolve, and maybe some stories that touched you, or just things about One Girl that have just inspired you.
Well, I think, looking back, my Instagram So I'm going to round it around. But my Instagram is very curated. I started it as an art Instagram because I do make art, not as my personal Instagram. So I've been very careful about who I follow and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, One Girl Revolution came around, and every time an episode comes out, I'm like, oh, I should follow this person. Oh, I should follow that person. And now my Instagram is just small businesses and One Girl Revolution. So I have a shopping problem.
But they're also inspiring.
They're so good. Yeah, exactly. But no, I think it's definitely, starting out, we talked about that, where women have a story to tell, and, making differences in their community. And you think about, why do you do the things you do, both good and bad? And, looking at these women, it means so much. We just talked about, giving a homeless person $10 and how much that meant to them. For somebody to hear your story and listen to you and ask you questions about it means the world beyond for these people. And these women are just doing what's right. My dad always says it's doing what's right and it's doing what's good. And so they're just doing what they can with their communities. And it's really easy to feel downtrodden and give up and whatnot. But no. And, I think just having a platform like this that tells these stories is priceless.
And you tapped into something there. So many of the women and girls that we've had on the podcast haven't told their story before, or they haven't been given a platform like this. We know all the time with media, the media has a 30-second soundbite or even smaller. They're looking for a 10-second soundbite just so they can interview somebody and cut it up and put it into a story. Sometimes it encapsulates the story, sometimes it doesn't. And this podcast really was created to create a space for women and girls to tell their authentic stories. And I think there's so much freedom, just like you were saying, there's so much power in telling your story, and then also having someone pay attention to you and listen, and then follow your Instagram or follow your social media. And that's what I've heard so often from so many of these women, because I always ask, like, what can people do to get involved in your work? What can they do to support it? And yes, people can donate money, people can give in different ways, people can volunteer. So many of them, though, say, all you need to do is just follow my page. Like, just follow my page or share my story.
But that's exactly it, is no one's asking, whether it's art, like my, Instagram, and I follow a lot of artists, or if it's a social cause or anything. But no one's asking that question, what can I do to help? And I think it's a hard question, because you think about your own community. If something happens, or, growing up, somebody dies, what do? You cook food and you take it to them, and you want to ask them, what can I do? When I got married, there was a lot of people saying, well, what can I do to help? It's like, no, don't ask me that. Like, you gotta be a mind reader and figure out what I need.
People always say that with like new babies. People call new moms or new parents and they say, what can I do? And they're always so overwhelmed. They're like, just do something. Like,
you're
I don't
in
care
survival mode.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing, it's so easy to just literally follow a page and then fall in love with it. Like, the Detroit Pit Crew Rescue, and I want all the dogs now. It's a problem.
I was going to ask you, what are like a story or two from one girl that you know of that like really touched you? Obviously, Detroit Pit Crew is an amazing one. That's a video. I'll be sure to post that in there.
Well, I think, and I know that one was a really early on one. Sorry, Delia, I'm stealing all the time.
We'll give Delia's time is next.
I'm a middle child, so I have to steal the spotlight when I can. But I think, I don't know, a few weeks ago or a month ago, you did Erin Mitchell, which is, you did it for Native American Awareness Month. And we have been talking about that a lot lately. But just touching base with that, which I think it's and you can fact check this, but I believe it's 1 in 4 women.
Yes. It's
Indigenous women. So that's First Nation, Native American, Indigenous, whatever you want to call it. But they go missing, or they're murdered, they're raped.
Murdered and missing. Yeah.
They're murdered and missing, and no one cares.
No one talks about it. It's a genocide.
And it's not just the U.S., it's Canada too.
Yes. North America. It's amazing in the worst possible way, where people are not, people aren't talking about it. And that's why I wanted to have Aaron on. Spoiler alert for everyone who's listening, we're going to be talking a lot more about Indigenous women in the new year in 2021. So I'm already working on a series with that. But yeah, Erin was so incredible. She's created numerous ally organizations that work with Indigenous women, work alongside them, and raise money for their different projects and raises awareness.
I mean, you think about a subculture, I guess, or a culture of North America, especially, that just gets downtrodden again and again and again. It's that, like, you know, they already have all these, you know, the homelessness, the poverty, this, that, and then it's, you know, 1 in 4 women. That's like not okay. That's unacceptable. But yeah, that was one that definitely spoke to me. And of course dogs, because I love them so much.
Yeah, so I'm in line with Moira and Kate also. We all follow Detroit Pit Crew and all the
animal organizations.
All the other dog rescues. Like, Moira just bought a house, and Kate and I are always watching to see if there are hypoallergenic dogs that Moira can adopt and bring into her home. But I think in the same line, I also have followed so many of the people that have been interviewed by One Girl. And something amazing to me is that they're always promoting other women. And then I follow those women. And even when I did my cleanse, I think you had interviewed Lisa Hendrickson Jack.
Yes,
is that correct?
got it.
Yeah.
Fertility Friday.
Fertility Friday. So I started following her. And then there were so many other women, either dietitians or also working with women's hormonal health, that I started following, and that kind of kickstarted my cleanse. So even just in this year, it has made such a difference in how I've been, in my personal perspective, and how I've been carrying out my day-to-day. But it's so powerful to see that all of these women are pumping each other up and supporting each other and not competitive.
Mm-hmm. We need to see more of that. And I've been so touched by that too. And it's cool because it's created this community where I've been able to connect different women as well. So if I know someone who's working on the issue of human trafficking, and then one of the guests who is working on a completely different topic, she mentions human trafficking after the interview, I'm like, oh, you need to know this person, and connecting them and telling them about one another. And I hope that it continues to grow in that way. But we need to see more of that in the world, where it's so supportive and just a loving, authentic space for women and girls to feel supported, and also just to feel supported to be themselves and who they are and who they were created to be.
And that's a shame with, I guess, our current day and age, with our technology status and our global status throughout the world. I think there's been this kind of separation, or I guess aversion to reaching out to one another or promoting one another, that kind of has gone away due to COVID, because everybody's looking for that commonality and trying to reach out and help each other.
Yeah, social media is such a tool to be able to connect with people. And that's even so many of the guests, people ask me all the time about One Girl, like, how do you find the stories, or how do you get connected with people? And to be totally honest, it's like friends or sisters. My mom is always sending me stories like, oh, I saw this person. Oh, I saw this person. And social media has been such an incredible tool to reach people that I never even thought possible. Getting connected to them. Like, I know we had Annie Ann from Annie Ann's Pretzels on. She has like this crazy, incredible story, and never in a million years would I think that I would be able to have Annie Ann of Annie Ann's Pretzels on, and randomly a friend of a friend knew her really well, and then through social media we were able to connect. So there's so many different stories like that, and I think we need to create spaces and use social media for that good, to support one another, to share stories, to advocate for issues, that learn about issues, but also advocate for things that we find out about through social media. It's like, once you know, you have a responsibility to do something. I know that that's been a theme or a topic that's come come up numerous times through the podcast is when people are like, once you know, you have to do something. I think there are so many different stories. Like when I think about what are the stories that touched me the most, like everyone is so uniquely beautiful in its own way. And some of the stories I didn't even feel like a personal connection to necessarily when I was booking the interview or setting it up. And I've learned so much because before the interviews, I have to like learn what questions to ask and do my research on the person and then do my research on whatever topic they're working on. I know that through the past year, I've learned so much about incarceration and the incarcerated population, which I continue to go down that rabbit hole to learn more about and advocate for people, incarcerated people, and for their stories to be heard, because I think that there is so much we could talk about in the justice system that needs to be reformed. But I'll leave that for another day. But I just want to encourage everybody who's listening, everybody who's listened, thank you so much. Everybody who's listening, please go back. If you haven't listened to all the episodes, go back and find an episode that touches you, or an episode that you don't know anything about. Just randomly pick one and learn from that woman or the girls that are on. I know I had 2 sisters on last week that created a volunteer network, and they're amazing. I just like randomly saw their story on social media and reached out to them and had them on. So learn from other people and share their stories, and continue to subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't, please leave us a review. Every listen helps, every share helps, and every subscribe.
Well, like we just said, all it takes is following, but also just share it. You know, and I think, Delia and I could be even better with it. We go through phases.
You're going to share it this week though, because you're on it.
Definitely. Of course.
One of the big things that has happened over the past year over the past 2 years since one girl started, and it was a big dream. You girls know, and a lot of people that have listened to this know that my dream for One Girl has always been to have visual representation of what One Girl Revolution is. So to have a video series or do videos. And I have done some along the way, but they've been very homegrown, pulled together, and they're great because they still are telling the story. They're up on YouTube. There are a lot of videos up there, but I'm so grateful to a production company in Chicago called Behold for partnering with One Girl Revolution over the past year and a half to create The Girl Inside, which is a short documentary. It's 10 minutes that covers the story of Dr. Laura Biaggi, who teaches storytelling to incarcerated women within Cook County Jail. It still blows my mind that we were able to get in there and then spend an entire day with these women, interviewing them, talking to them about their stories. And I want to encourage everybody who's listening, please watch and share The Girl Inside. It's up on YouTube. It's on Vimeo. And I'll be sure to share the link. But that video, that short documentary is so incredible to me. And it changed my life. That day changed my life. But even watching it, it just really inspires me to hear these women's voices and their stories, and talking about how they were an empty shell when they got to jail. And then they took this class and it opened them up. It was almost like a flower blooming. And they recognized that they had purpose and that they had value and that their life mattered. And yes, they made mistakes. Yes, there were things that they had done that landed them in Cook County. There was a reason they were there. But they still are human beings, and they still are people, and they still have a story, and they still have a purpose. And even now behind bars, they're being there for other women who are behind bars with them. So there's so many things that I could say about The Girl Inside, but I'd love to hear from you girls. How did that touch you? Like, how did the short documentary touch you? Was there something that kind of stuck out to you, even about the process? Because you watched so much of it. I know, Moira, I came down to Chicago to be a part of it with you.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting so long for that video to come out because, being in Chicago, you hear about Cook County Jail, you hear about this, you hear about that, you hear about, the issues within the city and the people of the city. And then Kate came and stayed with me when the video was made. So I remember that day, when she left and then came back, and it was exciting, and I can't wait for you to see it. And then we waited and waited and waited. And then COVID happened, and we waited some more for this video to come out. But I just remember watching it, like sitting down, waiting for it to upload on YouTube, waiting for it to get released. And it's 10 minutes long. Like, I, for one, am not a YouTube viewer. The only video I've ever watched that's that long was the Coney 2012 video. That's the only video I've ever made it through that's more than 10 minutes long on YouTube. But no, I mean, I sat there and I watched it, and then I cried a lot, and then I watched it again and cried some more. But it's seeing these women that, yes, like you said, for one reason or another, ended up in Cook County, made a mistake, did something, not getting into the politics of police and whatnot, but in the justice system. But you hear these women's stories, especially when they're talking about when they're young and it's saying, oh, I used to set my stuffed animals down and I would be the teacher. Everyone starts out the same. We all have these visions. We all have these dreams of what you're going to be when you grow up. I unfortunately wanted to be Bill Knapp's waitress. I was not aiming for the stars as a child. And then Bill Knapp's closed. So I'm still chasing that dream.
And that's okay. I wanted to be a dog breeder.
So yeah, obviously there was something wrong with us. But seeing these women where it's, in just society and life just dumps on you and dumps on you and dumps on you. And then you end up in this cold, dark place. You're in jail. And we all saw Orange is the New Black and all that kind of stuff that really shed some light on the justice system and the jail system and whatnot. But just these women where it's like, right, they have no light anymore once they ended up there. That your light inside of you is continuously blown out. Your candle that's in your heart is blown out, and then eventually it just doesn't reignite. And then you end up in a place like Cook County Jail, and you feel like there's nothing for you. And that's kind of depression too, I know, is a big issue in that feeling. But yeah, I think it just was sitting there and you're watching these women where you're like, no, it's not just some scary criminal in there, but it's just people that society has failed over and over and over again.
And it makes you really wonder what impact the program that they're in is like a writing therapy. So what impact would that writing therapy have on those women or any young women, especially in anyone really, especially those of lower income brackets or that are having a hard time while growing up? What impact would that have on them becoming adults and making decisions later in life?
Yeah. And just on that note, these women, all of them said, no one ever told me. Before I took this class, no one ever told me that I mattered. No one ever asked me questions about what my dreams were, what my hopes were. And I think that's something we can all take away from that we need to ask those questions. We need to see, kids around us, whether it's our own children, our own family members, our cousins,
anyone in the community.
We have a responsibility to ask those questions and encourage these kids to be who they were created to be. And just one note on what Moira was saying about like seeing the women in the documentary. A friend of mine said to me when she saw it, she said, it was me. Like, I saw myself in these women. She was like, they are me. And I just think that that's what I saw. I think that's what everybody saw. We saw ourselves in these women. And that day, I just remember us saying like, oh my gosh, everyone's like one step away from Cook County. Maybe that's not totally true. I've said that to a couple people and they said, no, I never would have been in Cook County. But I think a lot of us, if you're hanging out with the wrong crew, you're you're in the wrong circles, a lot of times you can end up that way.
Exactly. And just, I've read a lot of stuff, especially this year, because like we've talked about a lot, this podcast there's been a lot of going back to, the grassroots stuff, but seeing somebody on the street and just telling them like how beautiful they are, or, oh, I love your scarf, or, just telling your friends, I love you, or just telling people and complimenting people. Words go so far. And if you don't hear that from a young age, you don't hear that you're beautiful or that you matter, why would you think that about yourself if you're never, ever hearing it?
Or that you're capable of anything. So there's so many young people that just kind of give up, and maybe they don't, like the woman and the girl inside that wanted to be a teacher. She probably at some point in junior high school or high school lost faith that she could achieve that, and there was nobody boosting her up or supporting her in that dream, and then you kind of go to the wayside.
It was probably from the beginning she didn't have that support, and whether that's family, school, community, wherever it is, but that doesn't matter. It's that, you know, when you don't have support from a young age, why would you, you know, look at Kate, why would you do One Girl Revolution if you didn't have the support and have people telling you in your community, yeah, totally do it, it's great, make it happen?
I also had people that said I couldn't do it, but yeah. It takes both. It's true. My family was so supportive. I have so many people that even if they didn't see the vision for it, now I feel like everybody sees the vision for it, especially coming up to 100 episodes. People are like, oh, now I get it. We're on the 100th episode. We're not coming up to 100 episodes, but people are like, I get it. Then they saw the girl inside and they're like, wow, okay, I get it.
But that's a solid mix of both, because then you get the naysayers and you're like, yeah, watch me, I'm totally going to do it.
I'm going into Cook County.
Right. And so, but if you only hear the negative stuff, why would you ever do it? And I'm not saying, you know, you can do anything, because I definitely couldn't be an astronaut. I'm too tall, for one. It's a big one that I can't fix.
I don't
My
like
vision's
air
not
food.
good. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you can be anything you want to be, because we got to draw the line somewhere. But just having that support means so much, and your words, anybody's words mean so much, whether you're talking to a stranger. And I definitely am somebody who's a little more reserved. My mom doesn't like the word shy. She uses the word reserved. But I definitely am somebody who will sit there and be like, oh man, that girl, she's like such pretty eye makeup. And then I won't say anything. I'll get through I'll walk right by her and be like, okay, cool, I didn't say anything. But that's something I need to work on too, is just being like, you look great today, by the way.
Delia, what touched you about the girl inside? You mentioned the one story about the teacher.
Yeah, so I think just that it's so humanizing. I've seen other documentaries on prison life or jail life, and I've had friends that have been in the system, but there hasn't been any representation for women that I've had exposure to that has been quite like the girl inside, where it really gets down to what people are feeling and what they've wanted for their lives and what they kind of feel for themselves.
And I'm just so grateful to, again, Behold is an amazing company that has supported the stream from the very beginning. Dr. Laura Biaggi, who signed on to do this project, and she's an incredible professor, incredible woman. I'm grateful for her, but I'm also so grateful for the women who sat in that room that day and shared their stories and shared their heart. And I will just never forget that moment. And you see so many pivotal moments in 10 minutes. You see so many pivotal moments that happened that day, but standing in that room, and you could have heard a pin drop when we were waiting for the 5 women that were coming, and we didn't know exactly who was going to be there or what their stories were going to be or how open or closed they would be to share their story. We were kind of prepared for anything. We were prepared for them just to sit and be super stone cold and not talk. But they walked in, and you see them cheering and picking up Dr. Laura Biaggi. And that was the first moment. And the second that happened, I was like, all right, game on. This is going to be an amazing day. And we're just going to kind of let the documentary write itself. We just want to create this platform, just like I said with the podcast, like create this space for people to be authentically themselves. And so that's something I'm just really proud of with the girl inside, that we were able to encapsulate that, and Cook County has seen it and the women have seen it, and all of them are just so proud to have been a part of it. So I'm so happy and so proud of that. So we have some questions from the people on Instagram, and let's pull it up here. The people wrote in.
I was going to say, I didn't write in any questions. So it's like real people. It's not just Delia and I writing in questions to ask ourselves.
The only question I asked was if this interview was happening.
Well, you to clarify, you asked via One Girl Evolution, you asked if there were any return guests, and I thought,
which is us.
I was like, well, maybe. I was like, that's kind of actually a good question that I'll answer. I'm planning on having a couple of guests back next year. I also have so many guests lined up that are going to cover so many different topics. Moira talked about Indigenous women, so I want to dig into a lot of different topics there, a lot of issues. So I have numerous women that I'm talking to with regards to that. So we'll probably end up doing a series. I'm going to do more on incarcerated women, Indigenous women, incarcerated women. So incarcerated women, I want to do a series and talk about some really interesting things that are happening with women within the system and outside of it, and women who have gone through the system and now are doing incredible things. I want to do a Detroit series. Obviously, I love this city, and we all do. So highlighting some Detroit women that are doing incredible things. But anybody who's listening, if you have stories and ideas, let me know. I'm also planning on having a couple of guests back, not just my sisters, but hopefully they'll come back at some other point too. We'll do a surprise episode. All right. Questions that came through. I'll mention them, and then if you girls have things to add. What was the most unexpected thing you discovered over 100 episodes?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Good question. I would say one of the things that was most unexpected to me is, well, there's a couple of things. One, how open women are when they're just given this space and they feel safe. So I've really worked hard to create, not to say safe space, but to create a safe space where people feel safe to tell their authentic stories. And I want to be really supportive of any woman who's coming on the podcast and support them. So I would say that, learning from each of these women it's just blown me away. I've learned so many things. It's hard to pinpoint one thing, but it's just so inspiring to hear from these women and what they're doing. I'm just looking at the question again. What was the most unexpected thing that you discovered? I've learned a lot about myself through this, and it's opened my eyes and opened my world to so many different topics that I didn't even think that I had any interest in. But I'm like interested in so many different topics, and I spend my like evenings on Instagram, like going down rabbit holes about like incarceration, or like the other night I was like watching a bunch of stuff about Kim Kardashian and like why she got interested in law and like all the different stuff she's doing with death row inmates. And I think just how one thing that was kind of unexpected is I always saw from my PR background and from my media background how I felt like a feeling that I had was that women were not represented in the media, or they weren't given the space to tell their stories. And through this whole process, I know that that is true. Like every single woman that I've had on the podcast, they don't feel heard. They don't feel seen. They don't feel like they have a space to be authentically theirs, and they don't feel like anybody's paying attention to them. So I love One Girl Evolution, and I love that it's a place where we can see women, raise women up, stand with women, support women, and then build this community. There's a lot of things. I hope everybody listens to the podcast because you'll learn a lot of unexpected things over 100 episodes.
So here's another question as kind of a follow-up to, what are the most unexpected things discovered? What do you wish more people knew?
Well, my knee-jerk reaction is how much work it is. Somebody called me the other day and told me that one of my friends wanted to start a podcast, and I was like, buckle up, because it is a lot of work, because people don't think about all the different things that go into it. And I'm grateful that I'm so convicted and that I care so deeply, and like that each story, each interview that I've done has fueled the fire, and so many good things have happened, because I can see how a lot of people that do podcasts, they get burnt out. Like I think the majority of podcasts do 7 episodes and then they're done. So I already feel like it's just a massive accomplishment that one girl got beyond the 7, but looking back, I can't believe that we're at 100. It really has kind of hit me the past couple of weeks as I've been uploading episodes, but there's so much work because there's so much like research that goes into just finding the guests. And then once I find people send me a story, I really dig into the story to see if I feel like it fits what one girl is. Because obviously we don't deal with politics. I try to stay out of politics. It comes in a little bit. I try not to pigeonhole people, but I want to just, it takes a lot of research to figure out if it's a story that fits. And then, of course, preparation for the interview. And then you have to be flexible because scheduling stuff is crazy, being able to record it. And then listening again and editing. And it's just a lot of work. But it's so worth it. I'm so proud of it. I'm so excited that these women feel proud of it whenever anybody's on. People are always so excited to share their episode. And that makes me really happy and proud. I wish more people would be open. And I say that meaning I see it even in myself. I think we all do it a little bit, where we live in our own little pocket, our own little pod, and we don't pay attention to the people around us. I know we were talking about like the homeless and things, but being open to what other people's opinions or what their stories are.
But that's the whole point of social media, is you kind of create this environment of like-minded people. I think that's the downfall of social media, is it started out as this, finding new and interesting people to follow, especially Instagram more so than Facebook. But then I also think that we've kind of slowly closed ourselves off to people that have different belief systems and different views and whatnot.
And people look differently than us. People talk differently. People are from different states. I mean, looking back over the 100 episodes, I was thinking the other day that I need to get a map, and a map of the U.S. because I focused on American women. We're probably going to branch out of that at some point. But for now, I really wanted to highlight American women. But I was like, I should get a map and see how many states we've covered a story from. And I think we're probably have covered most states, that we have a story, or even a story from a woman from such and such a state that we'd be able to pinpoint back to. But I want that challenge. And somebody, Moira, you brought up Erin Mitchell, who was on the podcast, and she had said to me, she was like, "You're a seeker." And I was like, yeah, I am a seeker. Like, I want to seek out information from people. And even I just admit, like, I don't know everything. And I think that our world would look so different if we all took that approach, where we said, I don't know everything. I want to learn. I want to learn from women. I want to follow people on social media that I might not agree with on everything. I know with the election, and we're not going to get into politics, but with the election, so many parts of social media were so divisive and vitriolic.
Even COVID too.
Exactly. Yeah. People have very strong opinions about what's going on with COVID, how to handle COVID. Do you wear a mask? Do you don't wear a mask? Do you do this? Do you do that? And people are just turned up. And so I just wish that more people would be open and listen. And that's what I hope One Girl is in the world, is that it just continues to be this space where people want to become seekers. They want to learn from things. I mean, we've done episodes on topics that, like, I always bring up this episode, the dyslexia episode, and that's just like the clearest example that I can give. Like, I remember connecting with that guest and not knowing, like, I don't know that I have a connection to dyslexia. I sometimes feel like I'm number dyslexic, but I don't know anybody that has dyslexia, and I wanted to cover it. And I learned so much, and it opened my eyes, but it just goes back to that seeker thing. So even if there are stories that you're like, I don't really connect with that, or that kids, I've had like a 5-year-old on the podcast. What do I have in connection with a 5-year-old? But it was amazing. Like, she makes coloring books. Lily, she makes coloring books for children in hospitals. And I was so moved by her story just because I sat there and listened and asked her questions. And like, I want to make coloring books for children in hospitals. So I think that we all can do better, and I'm striving to do better. And I hope that everybody who's listening, we all strive to be better.
Here's another follow-up to that one. What are 3 common themes that you've noticed?
Ooh, good question. 3 common themes. I would say community is one. I think a lot of the women that I've had on are really trying to build community with other people, whether they're working with those experiencing homelessness, whether they're just paying attention to the people around them. So I would say community. I think I've learned a lot from that, and I've tried to emulate that in my own life to build community with people, even people that you can't be with, you know, that you can't sit with or see, that you still find ways to make people feel loved and build community. Second, I would say kindness. I feel like every single one, it's so simple. And I want to get like kindness, not necessarily a tattoo, but I want to like have kindness everywhere, because so many of the women, it's just simple. Like kindness is so simple. You can like pay for someone's coffee in, you know, a coffee shop, and that simple kindness can just change someone's day or change someone's life. You read stories about like suicide or depression or addiction, and how like someone just noticing someone and being kind and like holding open the door or dropping someone like a little note in the mail, especially during COVID. I mean, so many elderly people are home alone, and just saying like, oh, I can't go visit this person because of COVID, but let me drop them a little note that doesn't even say anything necessarily, just says like, hey, I was thinking of you, love, whoever. That simple kindness can just change the world. And then third, revolution. I think that and really one girl revolution, the power of one, that each and every one of us has the power to change the world through our life. It goes back to the kindness. It goes back to the community, that each and every one of us has the power to change the world. So I would say community, kindness, and one girl revolution. And to all the guys that are listening, because I'm sure there will be some guys that listen, especially Delia's boyfriend and Moira's husband, Push. They will be listening, I'm sure. And we all have the power to change the world. It's not just about girls. It's not just about women, but we all have the power to change the world. One other thing that I wanted to mention that kind of, I guess, pertains to a couple of those questions, but someone said to me, someone who doesn't know me recently said something that kind of, it just kind of hit me really hard. And we were talking about the girl inside, we were talking about one girl evolution, and all of a sudden they turned to me and they said, it's not someone I know well, again, but they were on Zoom. So they didn't really turn to me, but they looked at me over Zoom and they said, how does it make you feel? And I was like, what do they mean? How does what make me feel? And they were being really aggressive. And it was almost like, how dare you? Like, how does it make you feel to be who you are, this Irish girl waltzing into Cook County or doing this podcast? And like, how does it make you feel? And I think what she was looking for was me to talk about my feelings and say like, oh, it makes me feel good to like be there for other people.
The white savior type of.
That's exactly. I didn't want to say it, but thank you for.
Well, somebody had to.
That's exactly what it was. And I sat there with it for a moment. I paused, like all of us should, whenever someone says something to you that don't answer back in emotion. And I paused and I turned to her and I said, I feel a responsibility. If we're going to talk about feelings, I feel a responsibility. I was given this dream, and thinking back years and years ago when I first had the idea for One Girl Evolution, it was probably like 7 years ago. And at first it was going to be a school program, and then it was going to be something else. And it stemmed out of me thinking about my New Year's resolution that I wanted to be a One Girl Revolution, all the small things and all the big things. And I think that all of us have that power, and we need to say, okay, rolling into 2021, 2020 has been such a difficult year for so many of us, all of us in so many different ways, but we have the power to change the world. And if we just strive to be a One Girl Revolution, we can change the world. But when she said that, I didn't take it personally. I just said, I know that I was given this dream and I need to chase it. And then yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes from here. But I just wanted to bring that up because sometimes people ask that question, like, why you? Like, why would you get to do this? And I feel a responsibility that my media background, the connections that I have, it's just crazy. All the people who have come out of the woodwork to support this project, connect me with people, make this dream happen. There are so many. It takes an army, and One Girl Revolution is an army. Everybody who's listened, everybody who's shared, everybody who followed, I'm like getting choked up. Everybody who's followed One Girl on any of the platforms, it's like you're changing the world as much as these women are, and you're actually changing their lives because people are paying attention to them. It's awesome. So anyways, thank you for everybody who is following. I'm so grateful to Moira and Delia for joining for this very special episode. I mentioned in 2021 that we have a lot of things planned. The podcast will continue, which I'm really excited about. We're going to change some things up so to be a little bit different, but it's going to be really cool. A lot of great stories. If you have stories that you think need to be covered, let us know. Send them in. You can send them via any of the social media platforms. I check all of that, so it will be directly to me. And, send them our way. Please continue to listen. If you have ideas or stories or topics that you want us to cover, please let us know. I mentioned some of those, but any parting words, girls?
I just have one question, since we are getting to the end of the year, which is crazy because 2020 has lasted for the last 20 years. But as we get into 2021, do you have any One Girl Revolution resolutions or any goals, dreams, or aspirations for the upcoming year? Things that you can tell us and not give anything special away.
I have so many ideas and so many dreams for One Girl, and I guess my life is it's just become so much. One Girl has become so much a part of my life, so I feel like I'm living and breathing One Girl every single day. I'd love to get into events, and I've talked to many of the One Girl Revolution guests about possibly all collaborating on events specifically for those who are experiencing homelessness, because I've dealt with a lot of different topics with regards to homelessness, and so I would love to bring a bunch of guests to Detroit or some other big city across the country, do something there. One Girl is probably we've built this incredible foundation of 100 episodes, but my hope is that continues to grow. We're going to do some more topical stuff, which I'm really interested in, talking about Indigenous women, talking about the murdered and missing Indigenous women and that genocide. I really want to talk about that more and educate people. I want to be educated on it. Incarceration, so talking about women who are giving birth in jail and prison, like what happens there. So I've actually been talking to a midwife who works with incarcerated women, and they're building community around the babies that are born and building relationships between the currently incarcerated mother and their children who are on the outside. So really amazing stuff like that. We're probably going to be doing something at the border. I'm in discussions with people about immigration. It's obviously not going to be political. It's going to be human. So I think everything that I want to go into 2021, and even in my own life, like I want to be focused on humanity and how can we elevate other stories? How can we support one another coming out of this crazy year? So I'm excited. I feel like the past month I've been giving this metaphor a lot, where I feel like when I sit in my One Girl office, that there are like puzzle pieces being thrown in. I keep having all these incredible conversations with people about topics or stories, and then making connections with different people. But I'm like waiting for the puzzle pieces to be connected. So I'm ready for it. 2021, bring it on.
Do you have any resolutions for us as listeners?
Ooh,
because, after what a crazy year, besides listen and follow One Girl Revolution on all social media platforms and subscribe.
Please listen, please follow. I just would encourage everybody who's listening and everybody who's sitting in this room, including myself, I would encourage everybody to notice the people around you and look for ways, just little ways that we can be better in 2021. How can we support people that oftentimes go unseen? One of the themes that I know you had asked me, what were the 3 themes that I kind of saw, and it actually, one of the themes is forgotten about populations. And that's what I plan to do a lot more on in the new year, is populations of people that are often forgotten about. So look for the forgotten about people, listen to their stories, listen to people, be a seeker. Don't just have your own opinion made up when you have a conversation with someone. Sit with them, encounter them, get to know them and their stories. Why do they believe what they believe in this time of civil unrest in a lot of ways and political unrest? What can we do to build bridges and have conversations with people and just love one another? Anyways, Moira and Delia, thank you so much for joining the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you for supporting this dream, and bring on 2021.
Woo! Woo!
For more information, check out onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.